factors they have in mind. Another thing is, who is going to take ownership? Is it the IT team or the legal team or the infra or the leadership? So this is where people stay away from owning the risk. That is also another major feature. Like if something goes wrong, who is actually going to take the ownership or responsibility? This is another major thing. And all of it, as I said, is networking. But who is going to, security is always thought of as an afterthought. As he said, it's all about scaling it fast and getting into business as fast as possible. It's all fast and furious world, right? Yeah. But the real thing is, how securely can you be fast and furious? That's the major thing. If you don't take security into consideration from the ground zero or the, very grassroots level, it becomes very difficult to incorporate it later. It cannot be a gate at the end. You have to put all of it like more of a shift-left perspective, where everything has to be thought upon from the very initial stages, so that the entire system is secure and able to tackle any kind of anomalies or the way people treat these AI systems differently. It could be totally not thought of while it is actually created. So this is the major problem, where the testing and everything has to be very robust, and security should be incorporated from the very early stages. So that's why it's mostly getting shelved and stops at some point of time.
So let's see what the audience thinks. So just simple raise of hand. How many of you think that compute is the biggest problem to scaling? Just raise your hand if you think it's compute, right? So it's about 5 people. Networking, how many think it's networking? More people think it's networking. Because the networking guys are on stage, you want to look at what about data pipelines? How many think it's data pipelines? Okay, how many think it's security?
Oh, wow, we could have more hands up in the air. Both hands.
How many think it is org and op model? What I mean by that is, who does what in an organization? Who has responsible for what? Yeah, and as a consultant who's helping clients go through this journey, I see that as one of the biggest, and it's always been the case, right? That unless you figure out your strategy, what do you want to do? Why is it important to do that? What value is it going to generate? How are you going to measure that value? And secondly, how are you going to go about doing what you're doing, right? Who has responsibility for what? What are the platforms required? What are the governance required? What's the data layer? Who takes, right? So all of this operating model also is very important. So let's dive deep into networking, since obviously that's quite important for the people. So I read this white paper on AI networking recently, right? One thing it makes very clear is that once AI scales, networking stops being plumbing and starts being the engine. In fact, I think you've mentioned in the white paper that 20 to 50% of the time taken for training is actually going into network traffic moving around, right? So Clay, having said that, what are some of the architectural changes in terms of topology, telemetry, silicon choices, are customers adopting when they need, both multi-node, low latency training, as well as multi-tenant inference?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, latency is super important. And latency, historically, people didn't talk about. We just need traffic to get where it needs to go. With AI, with training, but specifically inference, latency is extremely important. And so you want to use a chipset that has the lowest latency possible. From the build-out perspective, the amount of bandwidth that we're using, everybody's using the fastest chips available, so we have to have the fastest network available. You're not oversubscribing the network like we used to, and so you're building it one-to-one. Sometimes people are over-provisioning the network to add extra bandwidth and for failures, and so if you have network failures, you still have a one-to-one network. There's a huge focus. Like when we're building these things, I think a lot of people skip over what they think is the easy part, which is the physical build, and they put all their focus on the logical side. Are my teams ready? Can we build this? Can we do all the upgrades? Everything along those. And what you really need to focus on and what people miss is the cables. The cables were probably the largest problem we have with builds because a 10,000 GPU cluster will have 30,000 cables. And if you don't put a real focus on that, then your failure percentage is going to be really high. And then it doesn't matter how much bandwidth you have. If you have a 50% failure rate in your cables, you have half of what you planned. And so I think those are the big ones.
What, can you talk a little bit about, and I was surprised to read in the white paper that Ethernet's making a comeback. I'm like, dude, do I have to now have those ports back in my the RJ45 or whatever? So Ethernet is the way you're pushing it, right? And you're having an industry-wide sort of a standard to do that?
Yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, Ethernet is everything. As you guys know, you can adapt it to anything you need it to do. And so staying away from proprietary protocols and staying with Ethernet, and with AI using the most advanced of everything out there, even when the stuff ages and you want to upgrade, you can use everything that you had and you can redeploy it in other parts of your network. The switches that we're building AI data centers with today, you can deploy in your campus. You can deploy anywhere because they have all the same feature set. And so the feature set is chipset dependent to a point, but with Arista and EOS, all the features are built into all of our code. And so you can redeploy that stuff anywhere you want. And the training that your campus team, your WAN team, the training they have works directly in the AI data center as well. And so.
Cool. Thank you. So Renal, from an India and SAARC perspectives, what do you see some of the adoption challenges are? And how are you sort of really packaging your solutions to address the specific problems of the India and South Asia market?
Not very different from what's happening globally, but definitely one thing that's we've been slow at adoption of AI as compared to the rest of the world, and our scale is smaller. But I think what we need to do better is learn from the mistakes that others have done, and they've gone through their cycles of learning and deployments and corrections and so on and so forth. I think that's where we're still lagging, and we are still making the mistakes that we were doing earlier. Like, I'll give you an example. Deploying an HPC kind of looks very similar to what deploying an AI is. And to your point, you just spoke about Ethernet, right? When people used to deploy HPC, it used to be on a proprietary technology called InfiniBand. And there was a reason to it. It had its own goodness with respect to latency and other things. But, like Clay said, now Ethernet has evolved. And especially thanks to the chipset manufacturers like Broadcom and all these guys, all the challenges that you had with Ethernet are now resolved with RDMA and Rocky V2 and all the good things that are there. Now you're able to do much better with Ethernet than as compared to InfiniBand. But I see that adoption is slow. I see a lot of people are still, kind of either don't understand or don't want to take that leap of faith and move towards Ethernet, where the most of the world has already done that. Especially in the US, if you go to any large, AI deployment today, be it Tesla, be it Oracle, be it Meta or Microsoft, those guys have moved on Ethernet long back. I think that's slow in India from a technology standpoint. From a, overall, I think the major challenge that I see is from a skill standpoint. The network engineers have to evolve themselves and have to, upskill themselves and understand the AI network part better. That's a gap that we see in the industry today. So that's something. And then from an overall infra standpoint, I think it's more to do with power and cooling strategy and so on and so forth, because traditionally the data centers were built keeping some specific power in mind, but now with AI the power requirements are very high. The per rack kilowatt that you require, most of the existing data centers are not even able to fulfill that. So that's why there are very few pockets where people are able to put up their workloads and so on and so forth. So more than the technology, I think it has to do with the overall infrastructure, because you need humongous power, you need a lot of concentrated cooling there, and all those things are now the driving factor, and obviously the land costs in other areas.
Are there policy changes required, you feel, that would make it easier from just this availability and use of power and cooling, all the sort of necessary things to set up, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think, while we don't like our neighbor, but I think one thing that they've done good is they've come out with this concept of one district, one product, right? And they've made centers of excellence for each and everything that they do. And similarly for the data centers, they've identified areas where they're building such large scale, power generation areas, and that too on the renewable sources, right? What I see here is happening is all the states are kind of competing with each other, irrespective of if they have the wherewithal or not. They would roll out incentives on land, they'll roll out incentives on power, but they don't know if they're power surplus or not. And if they are, then what is the source of that power? I think at that point, I would definitely urge policymakers to have a consolidated view, than letting the states fight with each other on that.
Cool. Thanks for sharing your perspective on that. So Lakshmi, let's talk about security at scale, right? So you were recently, or your solution had to handle a very large wave of millions of malicious requests that came in. Can you talk a little bit? Are you able to share anything from that? And from there, then talk a little bit about sort of what are some of the unique attack patterns specifically for model serving APIs and LLMs, right? That worry you the most, and how should infra teams deal with that, right?
Yeah, so firstly I'll talk about the incidents that we have handled in the past, where our, the digital borders of our country were at stake due to state-sponsored hacktivists or other groups. So initially, the first time that we had to, handle this head-on was in 2023, in April, when there was a hacktivist group attacking, across the globe from the US airports and Israel and all of that. They targeted India. So that's when 6 major airports of our country got targeted. And we were actually securing one of the airports to start with. And that's when, this particular airport, the entire, all the traffic, everything passed through, and there was no downtime at all. In fact, all the other airports started having downtimes of more than 12 hours or 24 hours. And that's when one of the largest airport, which was running on the global, the largest application security solution, they were not able to mitigate this particular attack, which is a DDoS attack. So that's when they quickly shifted from that particular vendor to Prophase in just 5 minutes. So when an attack happened, you cannot take days or weeks to configure a solution. This is where Prophase is actually becoming handy, but it's easy and one of the fastest solution to configure. And we have proved this multiple times. So such trivial features matters most when security is at stake. So that's when they quickly shifted to our solution and also onboarded another airport. So 3 out of the 6 major airports of our country we could safeguard. So that's where all these anomaly behavioral detection comes into picture. It's not just about matching random patterns or the signature matching that used to happen in olden days, like legacy systems used to do. That was enough earlier, but now it's an AI age where all the attacks are fabricated using AI, and you cannot just sit there watching that and trying to block it if it matches a particular pattern. It keeps evolving, it's just like camouflaging, and you will not be able to detect. It'll just slip through like normal traffic. It's just like you cannot even figure out that this is something is going to happen because of that. So this is where every parameter, every context has to be analyzed. Context to attack, even that slightest intention to attack also has to be picked up with the latest, complete precision AI and ML models. That's how we have trained our models, to figure out how you can baseline your regular traffic and even detect the slightest anomaly or a deviation from it. This is how we could actually safeguard our infrastructure. And most of the other just dependent on the earlier situations. The second one, major one that happened was major on one of our largest financial institutions, again, which was behind an Israeli solution, which could also not scale. So they came across this airport use case and came to us in the middle of the night. And in 3 hours, we could actually bring back all of their infrastructure up and running. And the reason one, as you asked for, is post-Operation Sindoor, when our country was actually, holding the breath and checking out what kind of attack is going to happen. This is a time where it's no more physical warfare that happens. Every warfare starts with a cyber attack. They bring down your critical infrastructure, your power grids, everything, so that, all the connectivity and everything gets lost, and it creates a complete chaos before the physical attack starts. So this is where A lot of Pakistan activist groups are attacking our airports and our financial institutions and our refineries and all other things. And we were safeguarding and checking every traffic that's actually coming in. And without a single second of downtime, we could secure it all. So that's what a solution with AI being the core strength can do, because we are completely defending head on against these kind of AI attacks. And that's where you need to have the right intelligence and right training with the proper data sets to keep evolving, because attacks never stop. So cannot defense.
Yeah, and some of the... Thank you. And some of it is very subtle, right? It is not like an incident happens and there is an en masse, because it's relatively easier to spot that. But there are some things which can be operating under the covers, right?
Attacks often happen in silence.
Yeah,
You never know.
because data exfiltration might happen, prompts might be sent to try and understand what is the chain of thought reasoning. So, do you think that the threat models that our infrastructure teams use today, they need to rethink that a little bit?
Definitely, and it has to change from just the perimeter level of defense and the training and everything. It has to shift towards more of that, because as I said, attacks don't generally block or bring down the entire infrastructure in one go. They could be silently happening in the back end without nobody knowing. A prompt injection or a data poisoning, they're actually getting to know the logic behind it without anybody noticing it. So that's where all of it has to shift to an anomaly or behavioral detection model. This is where LLMs have to be brought into picture. ML based decisions have to come into picture, because it's happening in large scale. You cannot expect a human to sit in between and take all the decisions. Manual intervention can never come into picture. Humans have to definitely be there as an element, but when it's happening at large scale, it's all about keeping everything automated and everything vigilant, always up and running. The systems should always keep, as everybody says, the show must go on, but so do the security have to be as strong as that, right? Otherwise things can definitely go wrong at some point of time, which you cannot come back. There cannot be a rollback from that state.
And just for people in the audience who might be interested, operationally, where do you keep your detection mitigation? Is it at the network layer, the API gateway? Is it model layer, middleware? Where do you think, or is it across?
So if I talk about AI and stuff, most of it is API calls. Now the whole entire globe is a network of API calls happening one point to the other, one endpoint to the other. We all use our phones, ChatGPTs, our UPIs, and everything is all communications happening. Backend is API. It's no more applications these days. All the AI depends on all these API endpoints, and there's proliferation of API endpoints. That's where the attack surface is increasing. And there are a lot of APIs which are zombie APIs or shadow APIs, and undocumented APIs also there in the system, which could also be an entry point. So this is where API security is becoming a very crucial situation in every organization. We had instances where we were sending prompts to ChatGPT and ChatGPT was not responding, because the security behind it failed. So this is where security have to keep itself abreast of what's happening in the attack surface, right? So that's when, only if that is robust and that keeps evolving, can all your AI systems also keep communicating with each other and happen without any flaws. So this is very important to have the right security at the API endpoints, at your application layer, to detect each and every mannerisms of the traffic, the HTTP traffic that's coming in, going out. All of it have to be inspected. Even if it looks like a very legitimate request, something behind it could be malicious. So that's where deep inspection of each traffic is required with the right AI agents coming in.
So I think resilience, a key factor is observability. And for observability, you need telemetry, right? So a question to all of you. at what scale, at what level of scale does network and telemetry, observability and telemetry become non-negotiable for AI workloads? And what are the top 3 signals you instrument to detect? Degradation in model serving, is it latency, tail latency, floating point? What are the 3 things that you'd pick? Clay, do you want to go first?
Packet buffering and packet loss are 2 of the primary ones that we pay attention to. From a scale perspective, I think it's non-negotiable at any scale. I think as soon as you go multi-node, so if you have more than one node, I think it's non-negotiable at that point. And this kind of goes back to my earlier point of the teams have to communicate. The HPC team has to have network knowledge at this point, and the network team has to have host knowledge. And having the visibility into those, that's how they do their job better. And so I think visibility, like you said, is non-negotiable at any scale today.
And do you think you need to combine the sort of the ML observability together with the network observability? Because I feel we are doing that separately today, right?
I agree with you, and we absolutely need to combine them. If you can't see the whole picture, it's very hard to troubleshoot the whole picture. And so if you don't know where that loss is happening, which more often than not, if you have a slow job running, you don't know where that loss is initially. And if you don't have the whole picture to see end to end, all the way from GPU to GPU and everything that it passes through, then you're troubleshooting in the blind.
It's all about actually having all the systems communicating to each other seamlessly, because one system cannot work in silos and say that the entire system is safeguarded. As you say, the network layer, the application layer, the API layer, all of it have to, all the security at all of these layers and visibility. I mean, at the current days, it's all about having visibility. Without seeing what you have to secure, you cannot actually secure it. So this is where visibility and interoperability or communication becomes a key aspect for any system to work robustly. I mean, that's what I feel.
Absolutely. I mean, security can never be an afterthought. It has to be an integral part of the fabric. And, the way things are, like you said, the better the telemetry that you have, the better it is, because you can't protect what you can't see. And like the beautiful AI model that you've created for API, that has to be at all levels. To your question, right? I mean, even at the network layer, because network is a single source of truth, right? Whatever attacks are happening or whatever traffic is flowing via the network. So if you have better observability, better telemetry, and a richer data set, then you can apply a lot more AI ML on top of it and secure it further. And as the scale grows, especially from an AI standpoint, if you have large deployments happening, the attack surface also grows exponentially. So you can't pick and choose or have scaling or sizing of security solutions. Security has to scale at the speed of the network, and it both have to go hand in hand. And most of the time, the more open the architecture is, the more amount of telemetry that you have, the more standard based it is. It is better to interop, and that's where you see the value coming out of the whole stack and the ecosystem, because then the systems talk to each other, exchange information from each other, and protect the parts that they're supposed to do.
And also to add, one major question is, when we talk about telemetry, the telemetry should be actually within our country and the borders. It should be limited within our borders. That's where, in name of security itself, this should not be actually going outside. That itself looks like a breach. I mean, European, they have the GDPR compliances and all of that. Now we are bringing the DPDP compliance. This is where, why we are not having, our own LLM models, our own, intelligent platforms, where we are giving prompts to our agents so that our data remains within our country. So this is one major thought that should rest and sit with all of you and make you not rest, And why are we giving away all our data to all the, LLM models of, different countries? I mean, that itself, without knowing or knowingly or unknowingly, we are giving our critical data. There are some people who are, working maybe in cybersecurity organizations or many critical organizations and copy pasting all the code to a, ChatGPT or Gemini and asking them, okay, what is the next action item that I have to, add into the loop? So this is where data is actually getting, exploited in that way. So it's all about having our own countries, our own LLM models, which trained within our country, used within our country, so that we have real dependency. We don't have a dependency on any other foreign or global giants.
And that's a great segue to my next thing that I want to cover, which is sovereignty, right? And regional sort of nuances of what you're doing. So Mrinal, what are you seeing with clients? What are clients, because there are all these trade-offs. Cloud seems easier to begin with, but you're not thinking of all these other aspects, right? Are you seeing clients trying to switch into a hybrid sort of a model, more on-prem, and even looking at using other LLMs that are homegrown? What is the maturity of that market in India?
See, quite frankly, nobody wants to have a private cloud. Everybody's happy going to a public cloud because of the maturity that those guys have. But the reason people are building private clouds in India is primarily because they are regulated. The guys who are building data centers here are the ones who are regulated. And to your point, that's essentially because of the sovereignty part, which we all as Indians agree to, that the way the whole geopolitical things are happening. So whenever you have a sovereignty discussion, it usually moves towards the political discussion. I don't want to do that today. I'll stick to the technology discussion and a more practical discussion than a political one. So I beg to disagree with you in a few areas, and I'll tell you why. Like, for example, while I work for an American company, not because of that, but I've been trying to do this whole Make in India stuff for last 2-3 years, and thankfully our CEO is also an Indian, so she agreed to start the whole process. But when we have a big engineering base here, so we do a lot of development work also based out of India. But when we actually started out, and we've set up factories and we've built up, we are doing manufacturing here. But even then, a lot of components had to be sourced from outside because we don't have that, right? So that maturity takes time. And second, you don't have the experience, you don't have the skill set, so it has to be a phased approach. You can't, you just can't work in a silo. So it's not about, isolation is the word I would say. So if you ask me, it's all about resilience and control. That's essentially what you're driving at, right? So how do you do that? From an infra standpoint, you should be able to audit it. Second, you should be able to verify it. You should be able to evolve it as per your needs. And last, you're not trapped. That's the whole objective, right? So keeping that in mind, just a basic analogy, if you're building a highway today, doesn't matter where the nuts and bolts are coming from, as long as you are deciding and you are owning and you are driving and you are making the policies and you're making the tolls and all the other things there, right? So even from a sovereign AI standpoint, what sovereign AI infrastructure should mean to all of us is that the architecture should be transparent, so that we know what you're building. It should be, the whole supply chain for sure should be trusted, and that's where I think government has done a fabulous job by creating this trusted telecom portal and cell, where they, we have to go through so much of scrutiny. We give all the details of even component levels, who are our suppliers, who are their distributors, where do we source it from. So that's an amazing job that the government is doing. So at least you're sure of the whole supply chain. That's trusted for you. Even if we are not making, I'm sure we'll make it tomorrow, but today at least we are ensuring that the supply chain is taken care of. The whole network layer is auditable. You can do audit at every level, at the packet level and all of that. And then, security is built into the fabric, like you said. So and last but not the least, it should be all standard-based designs, so that, you're not locked in. So, and obviously supply chain is a big part of the sovereignty, but, what we should definitely look at is, can we verify the firmware, or can you, it's not just, all we have to do is, it's not compromised from any perspective, but you can't isolate yourself from the world right away. That's my take on it.
It's not about isolation from the world. It's about how we can be working together towards a common goal using our own resources. I mean, we are one of the largest population, and why start tomorrow? Why not today? That's the whole question, right? So now we have having one of the world's largest AI event in our own country, where all the global delegates from across all the countries, most of the countries, are coming here. What are they seeing in India, right? All of them have their users here. The entire data set is here. And why are we not creating it here then? Why are we not securing it here then? So that's the whole question. It's like, in name of security, we could be using, the global vendors, but are we sure that there are no backdoors? No, right? We cannot be sure of that. Can anybody in the room?
Is there anything at the policy level in terms of governance, to your point, in terms of maintaining the sovereignty?
Definitely. I mean, that is where our country is actually getting to. We have the DP. Yeah, DPDP is actually coming into picture, right? So that's where, so it took years for actually this to come into, get rolling. But at least we have started.
What about specifically to certain verticals like financial services? Is the RBI?
Yes. So we have SEBI guidelines and, the RBI compliances, right? But definitely it's not about isolating, our country from the rest of the globe. It's all about, absorbing the best from everywhere. It's not that we do it only ourselves, like, like what they do in China or anything of that sort. But it's about where we prioritize and where we isolate and where we create a clear demarcation, right? What is it should be here, done here, and what could be done outside? What could be shared across the borders? So this is where we have to have proper control, compliances and governance and strict regulations coming into picture. It's majorly because we don't have that strict governance and compliances in picture now. We are quite liberal. European Union, they are not liberal. They could screw you if something happens, right? Even if in case of the financial, something goes because of a third-party API breach, you as an organization could be secure, but because of a breach happening by one of your third-party vendors, then you're also responsible for that. So this is how strict regulatory bodies are outside our country. But India definitely has started. So this is where our mindset have changed. It's all about change or shift of mindsets, because we have the largest human resource. We are the world's largest global workforce. We work for all the organizations of the globe, right? All of the CEOs and
from a people standpoint, I think there's no doubt about it. The only thing is, it's a journey. You can't suddenly start manufacturing chipsets today. To set up a fab itself requires 2-3 years.
Definitely,
But and I think the government is heading in the absolutely right direction. What they're doing right now is that, for now, they're looking at open architectures and nothing proprietary. I think that's the first thing that one should do. That we should not go for anything proprietary, so that we're not locked in with that any specific vendor or company or country or whatever.
Definitely. Right? I mean, decentralizing is definitely a point. And you cannot have a single point of failure.
Exactly. And second is rely on open standards as much as possible. Even from from coming back to the AI infrastructure topic, right? There's something called as Ultra Ethernet Consortium. That's been made to standardize everything on the Ethernet side, and all the major players across the globe have joined that. So what we should ideally do is aspire to be a part of that, build our solutions around that, which are open, standard based and interop, so that even if one vendor or one country is not playing ball, as long as it's an open standard, you can source it from somebody else. That's where we should be heading until we develop the entire hardware capability, because software is still faster.
Yes, definitely.
Making chipsets, especially the specialized chipsets that you need today in AI's world, is not easy and fast. We'll have to depend on those guys, but we have to see how we get them to India first, and then learn, and then...
It's about how to strike the balance.
Exactly.
That's the whole key. I mean, because you cannot stop everything. You cannot, one day be an island. But it's about how you have strict compliances and regulatory, actions enforced. You just cannot have it in paper. It has to be enforced. That's the underlying key.
Yeah, and the sovereignty threat is real. I mean, I started working in the early 1990s, and this is a real incident. India tested the first, or was the second nuclear test happened in Pokhran, right? Immediately, there are certain Indian organizations which were put on the denied party list, which basically means, and I used to work for a multinational at that time in India, and we couldn't sell our products. So you're like ready to ship our products, and we had to stop because that's it, right? A lot of us have not lived through that, but those of us who have know that the threat is real and that we need to do something about it, right? So, but again, doing something to be where we need to be today should have happened 20 years ago, right? But it hasn't. So that's the reality, and I think we need to move from there to see what we need to do.
That's
All
why
right.
the things are changing, and that's
Yeah,
why we are
yeah.
all here at the summit to make a difference.
Quick crossfire question, right? So I'll go one by one. If you had to pick one thing to invest in today for safe, scalable AI infrastructure, A, 10x more network bandwidth, B, model monitoring and observability, C, stronger gateway, API gateway WAP, or compliance and government funding, right? Or government tooling. What do you pick and why?
Monitoring and observability.
Why? Quick, one sentence.
One sentence. If you can't see it, you can't troubleshoot it. And you're troubleshooting all the time.
Okay, remember that one, okay? Can't see it, can't troubleshoot. All right.
No, it's about the whole architecture and not one specific thing, right? Like I said in the beginning, in end of the day, the whole objective for AI is JCT, job completion time, and whatever is needed to do that and observability and monitoring is one key aspect of it, because unless you can't see it, you don't know where the bottleneck is, and unless you don't know, you can't correct it, and you know, one tail latency can screw up the whole deployment. So from an architectural perspective, you have to look at scalable, modern architecture, and these are subsets of it. So I can't choose one part of it, but yeah, I mean, I think you should look at the end state and design it that way. So if minimum JCT is the objective, then work backwards towards it.
Lakshmi?
I feel the entire fabric should be in and around the thought of secure by design. And then definitely it's a totality of all of it, because with just one part of it, you cannot build an entire architecture on just a single pillar. All the pillars have to be there, so you have a strong foundation and intercommunication as well.
Thank you. So before I hand it over to the audience for questions, I think what we heard today is things that are usually under the covers are equally important, right? Networking and cybersecurity are not the first things that are spoken about when it comes to scaling AI, right? They should be. Operating model of how people work together within organizations and who does what responsibilities, that's also very important, right? Telemetry, making sure you set it up so that you can observe becomes very important, so that you know when a problem is happening and you know when you need to do something to fix it. And I think we are all aligned that as a nation, there is so much more that we need to do to improve our sovereignty in this space, and so that we are not relying on somebody else's good faith to be able to operate our businesses. I will now hand it over to the audience. If you have any questions. Can we have some mics going around if possible? There are people raising hands.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
It's a question for Lakshmi. I think from yesterday to today, I've been hearing about AI a lot. What do you think about? What do you think about PQC? I don't hear anybody talking about post-quantum cryptography, and how are we as a world preparing for it? Other than, of course, I saw one stall showing a quantum computer. How do these things converge? So.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's beyond our area. I mean, quantum computing and everything, becomes very important in these days. And more about post-quantum cryptography, I would not want to comment much on it because it kind of goes beyond our area. Definitely, I mean, when we advance in terms of the technology space, I mean, we have to have all the right technology innovations coming into picture, right? So this is where we have to give the right weightage to each of the innovations that's coming in. Would you want to comment more on that?
Yeah, I mean, like she said, even we are not doing much on that, but my personal experience, while it is very good to invest on and research because that's the next area, but what's the biggest limiting factor? I don't know if you visited the exhibit area. IBM has put up a whole quantum computer there. If you look at the whole stack, 90% of that is cooling. And only 10% is the quantum processing that's happening. Because how it works is at minus at whatever degrees, right? How do you achieve that in practicality is very difficult for now. And to scale it is even more difficult. We have so many other problems to solve for now, so let's focus on that. But that's an interesting academic discussion to have. But and I'm sure engineers at the back end are working on it. But I don't have any answer to you from a crypto standpoint from that perspective.
I know there are a lot of questions, but the organizers are telling us that we have to wrap it up. Maybe we do one last question. Do you want to?
Excuse me. Using the example of DNS, right? A choice on protocol opens up DNS cache poisoning, man-in-the-middle attacks, and then the security fix takes about 2 decades, DNSSEC, right, to develop the standard and get to implementation, and you require root to registry to registrar to have effectiveness. With everyone barreling down the path of creating agents and agentic frameworks, how do we avoid the Humpty Dumpty problem, where you're just creating messes that you're trying to clean up after the fact that are too laborious when things are at scale? What can we do to implement the discipline necessary to make sure the cybersecurity elements are addressed up front?
You bring up the amount of tech debt in the world today. It's unbelievable. I'm a firm believer in training your teams, training the people, training them with the right culture. I think the culture of an organization, and I'll use Arista as an example because I spent a lot of time at another company also. Coming to Arista, and I've been here 5 years now, coming to Arista and seeing the culture here for quality and just how all the people in the entire company are empowered to make sure the quality stays high, I think that's super important. And so I really think it comes down to the mindset of the people. If people want to get along and work together, they can. If they don't, they won't. And so if you're trying to implement something in your organization and it requires massive change, it starts with the people.
Yeah, and the other thing I've seen that works really is that you run at 2 speeds. You don't run a sprint or a marathon. You have to do both, right? Because sprints put money on the table that then can be invested in the marathon, right? So it's important to do both and do them at the same time, unless you are required by law and regulation to run the marathon first before you start running the sprint, right? So that's the trade-off that you're always looking at. I think we have to, sorry about that, I know there are other questions, but the next panel is ready to start. And thank you all for being an engaged audience, and thank you to my panel members.
And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Rahul as well for wonderfully moderating the session. And thanks to all the audience for patiently listening to us. Hoping to meet all of you soon. So thank you, and Jai Hind.
No, thank you so much, Rahul. This was really nicely moderated, and thanks everyone for sparing your morning with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we disperse, sir, ma'am, can we have like the mementos and a picture together? Abhishek, please come.